empowering you through the voice of truth with your host, Dr. Joel Hunter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Joel Hunter, host of Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth. And on today's program, we've got two of my favorite people. You're going to love this. Reverend Mary Downey, who is the executive director of the Hope Center in Kissimmee. And I got to say, this woman is the epicenter of compassion in Osceola County. I mean, you're gonna love her and what she does. And Pastor Scott Ballou, who's the founder and CEO and the president. Can you have more titles than this, Scott?
And they all come with the same pay. That's awesome.
Of Matthew's Hope in Winter Garden. It's a phenomenal ministry. And both of them will help us understand the real challenges and what they are for those who are willing to do what's necessary to climb out of poverty and help them in their road toward independence. So thanks you guys for showing up today. I've been really looking forward to this. First of all, I just want everyone to know what you're doing. A lot of people who are in leadership, who especially deal with the vulnerable communities in this region, know what you do because you have a great reputation, both of you do. But give us a sense of your operations, and I'm gonna do what my grandmother would never permit me to do. I'm gonna start with you, Scott, just because you'll love this guy. I can't, our team has visited the site that you just now moved out of. You're going into this new site. It really amazed us at the various services you offered to those who were willing to put forth effort to become independent. Yeah. And so would you tell us a little bit about your operation and then how you help people to become more independent?
Well, I think the first thing for us, Joel, first, thanks for having me, but sure. It's that we really tried to look at what other people were doing, and honestly, we did the opposite. If it just took money to get rid of poverty, we would have gotten rid of poverty long ago. And I hear people talking about eradicate homelessness, and if that's the case, then they certainly didn't read the Bible, because that's not going to happen. So we tried to take a look at how and why people got to where they got. The analogy that I use often is that if someone has a runny nose and all we keep doing is handing them tissue, we're going to spend a lot of money on tissue, but shouldn't we be trying to find out does that person have a cold, allergies, a cocaine habit, what have it? Right. So we can get to the core and find out, peel that in your back, get to the core of what's going on with that individual. And then from there be able to find out specifically what their needs are instead of keep throwing the same thing at everybody. And our goal is not to enable anybody. I mean, biblically, it clearly even states that you work, you eat. And so we try to identify those people that have that ability. If they're physically or mentally enabled, then we want to treat it as such, but not treat everybody the same. I think it's too easy to say that mental illness is the cause to homelessness. I think mental health plays a big part of it, but you got to separate those two. And so that's where things start. From there, we will do everything from, the list is long. We'll help you get your birth certificate, Social Security cards, Social Security benefits, VA benefits, we help with medical, dental, optical, mental health care. We have transitional housing. We have a preschool called Firm Foundation, a Montessori Christian-based preschool. It really is trying to, again, to approach it as a very holistic, and I hate that word because we hear it all the time, but a very holistic approach to how we work with these people. Yeah. The feeling is that nobody owes you anything. Yeah. But we want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to move towards a life of independence and self-sustainability.
Yeah, good. How big a community are you dealing with there? I mean, not the outer community, but the clientele that you have, or the folks that see themselves as a part of the journey that is Matthew's Hope.
It varies constantly. I will tell you, though, that at any given time, we have a few hundred people we're working with at any given time.
Okay.
But that's going to range from everyone from, we have 15 transitional homes, so it could be a family in one of those homes, a single mom. It could be a very chronic homeless guy that we see normally on the side of the road.
Yeah.
The one thing that kind of separates us from many ministries out there is that we were so far separated from everybody else that we couldn't lean on other organizations or other ministries, and we were 10, 12 miles out from anybody close to us. So we found ourselves working with the chronic homeless, the veteran, the woman who's been through abuse, the drug addict, the alcoholic, someone who just got broadsided by life. So what we did is we started looking at that and saying, okay, how do we approach each one of these people as individuals? God created us each individually, and I think we need to approach things that way as opposed to just throwing the same thing at everybody.
Yeah. Okay, Reverend Donnie, I'm going to call you Mary, okay?
That's fine.
Because we work together in several different capacities, and we're friends, and so, but you're remarkable. What you're doing is just like, how old are you? 17, for crying out loud? Don't tell me. Yeah, I don't need to know. But
I was just going to say 22.
Okay, good. Let's go with that. But
right.
really, what you're doing in Osceola County is really significant. Tell us the story of that.
Absolutely. So the Community Hope Center is a one-stop shop for wraparound services, holistic in the same vein that Scott's talking about, where we are looking at each person as they walk in the door and identifying their barriers, identifying the things that are keeping them in poverty, and then addressing those barriers. One of the key things for us as an agency is that one of our questions that we ask people as they come in the door are, what are their wishes, hopes, and dreams? So many people who are facing poverty, and in Osceola County, poverty looks like homelessness in a lot of ways. They're in survival mode. And so we are looking at how we help people thrive instead. We want to help shift gears in their life and their minds and their futures, and talk about how to get out of that survival mode mentality and look at what the future could hold. What are the things that people want to achieve? We believe every person is a valued person of God that have been gifted in so many ways. And so we're really just zoning in on those giftedness of people. And then reminding them who they are, reminding them how much they are loved and cared for, and then talk about the barriers that are in the way. And so in some ways our agencies are similar. We do some of the same things. We focus on identification, employment, housing assistance, rapid rehousing, and housing first as well for those who are chronically homeless. And then we have a healthcare center on site, as well as spiritual direction and care.
Okay. Yeah, something strikes me as I see you both sitting side by side here, and I want to know how you handle this. You know, Scott could be a drill sergeant. You seem to be the angel of mercy who wants to see the best in everybody. You know, and wants them to discover their best and live up to their full potential. Really, but he does too, you know? But I want to know how you, because the leader always sets the tone for the ministry. How do you help make sure that you're not enabling, because the investigation is great, but people still, especially if they've been in this a long time, they've developed the capacity to kind of work the system.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that?
Truth and love. You know, you said earlier that you thought I was the angel of mercy and very compassionate, but actually my spiritual gifts are neither mercy or compassion.
What are they?
Justice.
Oh, wow. Now there you go.
And so, and prophetic voice, honestly. And so being able to speak into people's lives truth with love. We can empower people to believe who they are. That doesn't mean that they have to stay where they are. And so, I mean, it's funny. I think about my team. I don't know that any of my staff would call me an angel of mercy, though I am very empathetic. And I believe there is a large difference between compassion and empathy. The ability to say to people, "I see you, I hear you, I'm listening," is empathy. Compassion is simply just wanting to help.
Yeah.
We want to help, but we have to do it in a way that empowers a person to move
Yeah.
forward in who they are.
Yeah.
And we're very much an agency that wants people to develop into their true giftedness.
Good.
And sometimes that looks like speaking words that don't always feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And it sometimes looks like not giving a food bag when somebody comes in and just asked for food. We want to know what's underneath that. What's
Good.
the question underneath that?
Good. Pastor, you, Mary brought up the whole idea of team, my team. Tell us about your team.
I've got the best team on the planet.
No, you don't. I do.
And I knew she was going to say that. You know, I mean, I come from, you know, I'm a street kid, and you know, I've been homeless, and I don't know if I call it, after 28 years, still in recovery, drug addict, and you know, 9 divorces between my parents, molested as a kid, and all those different things that should keep me from moving forward. And that's a big thing around us, is moving forward. And I was able to surround myself with a team of people that one, have the qualities that need to do that, because a lot of them have their own history, so they can empathize. Okay, but they also, it's a little harder to get past that, you know, the junk.
Yeah.
I've heard great stories. I call it layering. You know, that they if they make the story bad enough, maybe we'll just give them the farm.
Right, right,
You know,
right.
I was headed to the doctors with, I only had one eye, and we got broadsided, and my disabled child fell out of the car. Next thing you know, we got rear-ended. And I'm going to stop. Okay, let's talk about what's really happening here. We've got some very compassionate people on the team, but they're also come with unique qualifications. We have an RN on our staff, Nurse Nancy Paff, who used to work with the Hope team, and Nancy is a very special human being. I mean, she will be on your hands and knees, but she will look into their face and say, that's not going to happen. She'll go out to a camp and change a wound. At the same time, she'll make sure someone is getting there, but we're not going to play games. You don't show up, she's going to let you know. That's how it is. We have a social worker on staff, Monique, who is a single mom, put herself through school, get a master's degree in social work. And so again, when she sits across from the table, what we tell people is you can either take all that junk, you can drag that around with you the rest of your life as a weight,
Right.
or what we tell people is let's pile it all up and use it to shove ourselves over the fence.
Yeah.
And you get to make that choice today on how we're going to do that. If you want to stay, we don't make anybody do anything. We simply provide the opportunity. We don't do it for you, but we walk with you. And I think that, you know, this fuzzy bunny Jesus stuff that I think that we're always trying to give people. Look, I'm a God's guy, but if you didn't read the whole thing, it's not all about fuzzy bunny Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that we've got to step back as Christians sometimes, and because we swing one way or the other.
Right.
Really solid Christians that will do nothing. I got a note from a guy the other day has a degree in pastoral counseling, and I wanted to know from where. Because he says to me on thing that, you know, they're all lazy, they don't want. I'm going, wow.
Wow.
And I respond to him. Sometimes that's true, but y'all, what happened in that person's life?
Right.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the path that made it okay to live that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what I think we need to be in search of. And then, you know, it doesn't, you know, handing money out the window, it's not the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not.
Yeah.
But walking with someone, that's the answer.
You bet.
And again, understand too, the one thing we do a terrible job at in this country is really putting money towards education, which would make a big difference, and mental health care. So we focus a lot on that also, partnering with people for mental health care and putting people to school.
Yeah, good. Reverend Downey, I want to ask you. I said I'd call you Mary, now I'll call you Reverend.
I
but I'm just looking at you, and so you know who I'm talking to. You have this larger role than just the Hope Center in the community, and part of my work with the Commission on Homelessness was hearing about Osceola. Of course, has a special population of homeless. Every county has a different mix of chronic and family homelessness, but because of the industry, the entertainment industry, and the service industry in Osceola County, you have a lot of family homelessness, and not a great history of addressing that community-wide.
That's true.
You've begun to do that. I know you've got kind of a project that you're planning that will be, you know, pretty spectacular if you can pull this thing off.
Right.
But tell us more in the wider community, what you think is important to not solve homelessness, as Scott points out painfully, but to at least do what we can to make a significant difference.
So I think one of the things that's really important to know about the Hope Center is that, yes, we do on-the-ground work with people who are facing poverty and homelessness. But my role as the founder and executive director in the last couple of years has really turned to more advocacy in our community, to bring awareness to what is actually happening on the ground with people in poverty, and to make sure that that message is being communicated to our community leaders. And that role for me has really shifted, especially as we've done more work with the Commission on Homelessness and the work that you've done there, as well as our community in some ways is finally opening their eyes to what has been occurring for the last 15 years in Osceola County. I began my work working with families and hotels in 2006.
Wow.
And so, and at that time, I remember meeting with certain county commissioners who, when I said we have a homeless problem in Osceola County, looking at me dead in the eye and saying, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. We do not have a problem here." And there was for a long time a lot of just heads in the sand, just not wanting to look up and look around at what was happening in their community. There's been some phenomenal work, though, in Osceola County in the last few years where that is no longer the case. I'm so proud to be in a community now that is focusing on how we can do a better job to alleviate our issues. I mean, most of our families are living in hotels and motels on the corridor, not because they're not working, not because they don't have a path forward in life, but because we didn't do a good job as a community to build the type of housing they needed to survive and thrive. And so that's what we as an agency have been really pushing in the last few years is more affordable housing, and to the point where we're at a place where we feel like if no one else is going to build it, then we will. And so letting God lead the vision of that. And so I will pull it off with God's help only.
Well, that's how we all live, my sister. Let me just switch gears just a little bit here, because both of you are here because you're really good at what you do. When we talk about being providers, I invited you on because I want people who really know what they're doing and do it well. But there's this whole network of people in the church world who would love to help, don't know how. Excuse me. A lot of them won't become involved in the organizations you have. But if you could speak to churches or other congregations, synagogues, mosques, whatever, but just speak to congregations, and you would say to them, we can't handle everybody around at our venue. We aren't designed for that. But if you can do what you can do, it'll help the bigger picture. What would you say to pastors? What would you say to congregation members that might make a difference in supplementing or complementing with an E what you do? I mean, they're not going to become expert providers, but they can do things at a grassroots level that may be helpful. Scott, what would you say?
Well, I think one of the things that we've lived off since the day we started was do what you can, not what you can't. 8.5 years ago, I was handing out socks and underwear. Who would have thought that we'd be where we are today? But it was really realizing that people have gifts. They see this huge thing of homelessness that's not going to go away, and it's too big for them, and they don't make eye contact. We want to help them make eye contact, because once they make eye contact, now the person becomes a human being. And understanding that whatever you do day to day probably can be used within our ministry. Maybe you can't write a $10,000 check, but you're a great photographer, and you can come out and help us put the picture story together. Maybe you're a nurse, a doctor, a dentist. We've got a couple dentists that work with us that they came to me and they said, I don't know what I can do, I'm a dentist. And I said, really?
Oh my goodness.
Let me tell you what we can do. And you know, an eye doctor, the same thing. Different people, it's doing what you can't. I'm an IT specialist, great. We can use, there's nothing that you are doing out there that we can't possibly use in some way. And so that's the first thing. I think the other is we got to get past this idea of I'm growing my church.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to grow His church.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's literally become competition out there.
Yeah.
Who can have the best logo, the best worship team, the best stories, what have you? And it's like, you know, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. How about we just, you know, if the church across the street has the very best youth ministry in the area, then let them do it.
Yeah.
And you do what God's called you to do. But when we bring that all together, when you do a little something and you do a little something, I do a little something, God has a way of taking that and doing some pretty significant things with it. At the same time, I think we stumble over ourselves and we waste a lot of money because we want to make sure our name is on the door. You know, we got the recognition instead of giving God the glory in all of it. Because the truth of the matter is we don't save anybody. We really, we simply are vessels out there that God chooses to use, and we either choose to say yes or we ignore the call.
Yeah.
And I often compare it to sitting in traffic. We got nowhere to go. You see that guy next to you, and if I don't make eye contact, I'm good. I'm not letting him in.
Yeah.
Now I got nowhere to go, but I'm not letting him in. But all of a sudden when I look over, then all of a sudden I go, come on. I found myself the same thing with people. Is we need to make them get that connection, because once they looked into somebody's eyes, they were no longer something they read about.
Yeah.
They were an individual. I mean, our fastest growing population right now is women and children and the working homeless. That's 60% of the people we serve.
Absolutely. Well, it's 80% of the homeless population in our region. Mary, what would you say to local congregations that would be helpful?
I think the thing that I always go back to when I'm talking to churches is to remind people who they are. That to really care for anyone, be they materially poor or not, that we have to embrace our own poverty. We have to know who we are and what we have been through, and then recognize God's grace through our lives. That when you can finally look that person in the eye, you can do that because you can recognize where God's grace has been for you, and then you can offer that same kind of grace to others. I always encourage people to, if they want to get involved in mission work, that they do a small group study on the phenomenal book, When Helping Hurts, because it really will teach you the unhealthy ways we've served the poor, and empower you to empower others.
Absolutely.
And so I always encourage churches to do that, to talk about poverty alleviation, to partner with agencies that are doing poverty alleviation work, because eliminating poverty is a justice issue. It is not just a mercy issue. And so there is more that we can do than just a food bag. The food bag is important, and we shouldn't eliminate it or not do that. But we need to start asking questions of the people who are looking for those physical needs met, and then addressing those physical needs, but also talking about what's underneath it. And just be empowered as a church to know that you can do that. You can build a relationship with another human being, because that's really all any of this is about, is building that relationship, caring for people no matter their socioeconomic situation.
You know, Scott gave us a hint as to how he got into this work. He's got a background that would be naturally empathetic and naturally insightful about some. How did you get interested in this work?
So the hidden secret about Reverend Mary Lee Downey is that she spent her life growing up in a home that was in poverty and surrounded in domestic abuse.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Obviously, the joke around my office is that I spent my whole life feeling like I wasn't worthy, and so I built a whole organization to tell other people that they are.
Oh, that's fantastic! Isn't that good? How God can take just
Anybody
and any circumstance,
Broken pieces.
and just make it something so wonderful. Okay, we got like 2 minutes left. All right. I can't believe how fast this time goes. Scott, what's your next level of your next level of operation?
Right now it's expanding. It's taking, peeling it back, continue to peel it back, and find out what's the need that we're not missing, and fill that hole.
Okay.
God knows what that answer is. I haven't known since the beginning.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd add to is toxic charity. That's another
Yeah,
one. to
great
read.
one, too.
exactly.
It'll
Yeah.
change everything in the way
Yeah.
the church looks
Exactly.
at things. But I think that our goal is to continue to give people the tools to fill their toolbox with the things they need
Yeah.
to move their life forward to an independence and self-sustainability.
Great.
And it can be done.
Good.
Yeah.
Mary, next level.
Affordable housing.
Okay.
It's a beautiful thing.
Make it
I
happen.
can't wait for this project that you kind of shared with me a little bit some of the schematics and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff, and so we'll be looking forward to that. I'm curious now. Who are your key relational supporters? Because we don't do this alone. Who are your key relational supporters?
Absolutely. So we have worked very hard to diversify our funding structure to include our community leaders, development, government, business leaders.
personal.
Personal. Oh, you mean, oh, thanks.
You.
Me.
Yeah.
Who are the people that I call?
Yeah. that really kind of lift you up.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of those people is the United Methodist pastor. He's been my pastor for a very long time, Scott Smith out of Ormond Beach. Great guy who keeps me grounded. I'm a mama, of course.
Yes. Okay.
And my husband, who is
Good.
amazing.
Good. Scott, how about you?
When my tank gets really low, there's a little known guy that was a professor of mine at seminary called Steve Brown.
Oh yeah.
And
oh, buddy.
Steve somehow he has a way of making me feel worthy no matter when I call.
bet,
And
you
when he
bet.
says, I've been praying for you, I actually believe him.
Another great leader in our community and for our nation. Hey, we're out of time. I hate this. I want this to go on, but I want to thank you, and I want to thank Pastor Scott and Reverend Mary for being with us. They're superstars in our region. Thank you for joining us on Power Talks. Remember, these discussions are just that. They're discussions among us, but we'd love to see you continue the discussions at home and go one step farther. Get involved, because when Power Talks, you are empowered through the voice of truth. See you next time.
You just watched Power Talks, a Good Life 45 original production that makes you part of our Hope Team here on Good Life 45, where hope happens.